Cindy, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. Love you too. And I feel honored to be able to chair this meeting tonight. And I think it's beautiful to see so many people here sober and practicing the 12 traditions and the going by the 12 steps of the program and practicing the 12 principles of AA. And I'd like to start this meeting with a moment of silence followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me serenity to accept the things that cannot change, the courage to change the things that can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. For a long time, and he's got one hell of a personality, and you'll find that out when you listen to him, and one hell of a story that's built a lot of character, and I think he's got a beautiful family and a few beautiful children, and I just love this man, Frank Allen.
My name is Frank, and I'm an alcoholic. Love you a lot. Love AA a lot. I'm also a drug addict. When I first got here, they wouldn't let us say that. The old-timers would run us off. But it is good to see all the young people tonight, and I get excited because I should have been here a long time before I was, like most of us should. And as excited as I get, I also get a little resentment because, where in the hell were y'all for 5 years when I was sitting in the meeting with them old goats? Because for the first 5 years, all I heard was stories about World War II. Thank God for Tiki Pa and young people. But my mother always told me, son, your problem's not age, it's mileage. And I had the mileage to be where I was supposed to be when I got here. God sent me to the Methodist. They sprinkled me. It didn't work. Sent me to the Baptist twice. They dipped me. It didn't work. Sent me to the Department of Alabama Corrections. Didn't work. And AA was the last house on the right, and my wife sent me there. And it worked. And I'm so grateful for that, and I am grateful for Al-Anon. And if I make it to this July the 9th this year, I've been sober 10 years. And if I make it to September the 13th this year, I've been married 19 years to the same one. At this point, I'd like to thank my wife. Where are you, Gail? Would you stand up, please? She went to Al-Anon first, and I was here in 2 months. It's when you sleep out on the porch naked a couple of times, things change. And that's how I got here. They said, let him go, and by God, she did. I listened to Colleen last night, and I used to feel like she did. I had a normal childhood until I've been sober about 5 or 6 years, and I started raising kids, and then I looked back, and I didn't have a normal childhood. Because when my childhood, we went on vacations once every 20 years, where you needed to or not. And Dad was in bed drunk, Mom was pissed off all the time. Now, I don't know if that's normal, but that's the way mine was. But I thought it was normal. And a lot of us who grew up in alcoholic homes do think it's normal until we live differently. And all that was normal. I thought all mothers were mad all the time. And that's how it was. And the only way you got any attention was either to act out or hurt yourself. And then people would come to your rescue, but I never remember growing up and somebody just walk up and tell me they hug me and love me because they did. And we do a lot of that around here, thank God. Just look on somebody's face and they don't have to tell you you're hurting. And that's what I found in AA. And I look back, and that's what I was starting from the time I was looking for AA as soon as I had my first drink. I've heard a lot of people talk about being social drinkers for years. I missed out on that. I spent 2 hours of drinking beer, and it tasted like crap. And I got a feeling that was all my social drinking. The rest of it was for that feeling. Another thing that I didn't remember for years is before I ever had a drink, at about age 15, my parents took me to visit a psychiatrist. You know how we do, kids. Family's crazier than hell, and the kids go to shrinks. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And we're going to see that shrink, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking over his glasses, and he don't look like he's in good shape. Then he talks to me about 10 minutes, and, then he talks about to my parents about 30 minutes, and they come out, and they don't look in too good a shape. And after about 6 months, they diagnosed me as being depressed. And I let them know, by God, if you'd been looking at what I'd been looking at the last 6 months, you'd been depressed too. Because that's, then we quit going. Now, I don't know why we quit going. I guess I got better, or I got well. I don't remember a first drink. What it was is probably either Carlin Black Label beer or moonshine whiskey, because I was raised in a small town in Alabama that was a dry county. And what that means is 50% are bootleggers, another 50% are Baptist preachers. And that's the only thing dry about the county. And the reason they keep it dry is the bootleggers got more pull than the preachers do. Because most of the preachers would probably like a little nip every now and then. But they've got more pull, so, and I can't remember a first drunk or anything dramatic happening. The first one that I remember was like when I was 15 years old. And if one happened before then, it doesn't matter, because this is one I remember. And I was a sophomore in high school, and my high school was so small that they had a seniors graduation, but they invited the whole high school. Hell, there wasn't enough of them to party. So I go to this graduation, and they tell me I drink about 15 beers, a pint of vodka, and a half pint of whiskey, pass out, black out, and wake up Sunday. And that's the first thing I remember about drinking. Didn't enjoy it, felt sick. I got up to watch cartoons, and damn Walt Disney was on. And after that, I didn't remember any more about drinking. Maybe did it a few more times in high school. Don't remember. Lived in a small town. If everybody knew your business before you knew your business. If any of you come from small towns, you understand that. And they pass that along right quick. And also, too, lived in a small town where their main thing goes in the paper on Monday nights, who all got arrested Sunday and over the weekend. And like I said, I grew up, and I didn't see my dad drink for a long time. But I knew he did because he was sick a lot. And he missed work a lot, and Mom's mad a lot. But at some point as I was growing up, he stopped drinking. Mama forgave him 91 years later. Maybe. And that's the kind of household I grew up in, because Mama never did forget. She punished Dad. Dad didn't know he was an alcoholic, stayed sober 15 years, took a drink one day and died 8 months later. When I got here in Alcoholics Anonymous and you told me it was progressive disease, I'd never had to take another drink, thank God. I saw my alcoholism and my dad's progression work, so I believed what you said. And real painful for me to watch that, but at the same time I'm glad it happened, because it saved me, that and God's grace, and all you people that are out there tonight from having to take another drink. And no nobility or intelligence required. Just come in and do what you're told to do. And that's what I did for going on 10 years now. After I got out of high school, like I said, I played sports. I was a fair athlete. didn't get any more trouble, made good grades, went to college, and that's where it hit the fan. That's where I ran into marijuana. Never had seen it, heard it before, heard tales about it, and this was also in the 60s. That anybody grew up in the 60s, we were against it, whatever it was. We carried signs and we protested against it. Then the kids in the 70s made love against it. And before y'all got to do anything against it, it went away. So we still don't know what was protested. I always figure out my protest was I carried the signs with the biggest crowd. If they were against it, I was against it. Because I, did take a lot of sense to figure that out. I always thought the strength in numbers. And I didn't believe in anything, but I believed in covering my tail with that. Went away and I heard about marijuana and arranged with my roommate, and he asked me to try some, and no, not me. I'd heard what that stuff would do for you, make you go blind. It's like your parents told you when you're 10 years old, if you have sex, you'll go blind. First time you have it, you say, this is worth losing one eye over. That ain't no bad deal. So the first time I had marijuana, it wasn't no bad deal. It was rather good. I enjoyed it. I grew about 2 feet and raised hell and thought I was bigger and better and meaner. And went ahead, and the next thing he introduced me to was some pills, because first week we had, freshman's week, whatever they called it back then. I can't, rush week or something. Hell, I was in a rush when I got there and a rush when I left there. We had this rush week, and I was having trouble staying up and going to sleep, and he introduced me to some pills then. And we took, uppers in the morning and downers at night and drank beer all day as in-betweeners. And they had those little black RJSs back then. You'd get for a quarter. Man, you'd take one of them and do 2 days' worth of work in 15 minutes. Grind your teeth and get paranoid. It was fun. Take beer, take pills, drink beer, throw up, and have fun. Boy, and we call that partying, folks. Maybe I'll party different. That's the way I party. I'd been at school about 2 months there. This was my first school, and a buddy of mine from my high school said, I need to talk to you one day. I said, so what for? He said, I'm concerned about you. I said, well, what's your concern? He said, well, we've been here for 2 months yet, and you haven't gone to class. I said, well, I don't want to rush into things. And I didn't. I figured, had 10 or 12 years to graduate, no rush. My parents were paying for it. Later on, when I was paying for it, I speeded up that process, but they were paying for it at the time, and I wasn't in any rush. And about this time is when I had the first time I ever overdosed. And got up one morning, and I was feeling bad, and I was hungover, and I couldn't get going. And I was feeling bad, and I had some of my little uppers, so I took one. And you know how patient alcoholics are. I give it nearly 5 minutes to work. I took another one. Gave this one 10. I took 5 of them, drank a pint of whiskey, and all of them kicked in at once, and I was wide open, brother. We were doing 20 miles an hour, and telephone poles were flying by the car. And I was gritting my teeth, and I was seeing things, and I was going blind, and I ended up in the hospital. And they pumped my stomach, and they asked how much I drank. My buddy says, he drank about a pint. They said, my God, how long did it take him? They said, about 30 minutes. They said, my God, why did you let him do that? They said, hell, he drinks that much all the time. And I did. But they kept me in this hospital, and I'd wake up, and they'd run tests on me, and they had my hair curled, and they was running checking for brain damage and tumors and all this other stuff. And, of course, you know how we alcoholics are. They didn't find anything physical. I've had 4 heart attacks, cancer 9 times, and they ain't never found it. But, buddy, I'd end up in the hospital. And they sent me to see another doctor and got to see me another shrink. And he analyzed my problems. It was a small-town boy going away to the big college, inability to adjust. So he told me I needed to take these tranquilizers 4 times a day. And take it easy for a year, then I could go on with my life. So I walked around a damn year taking tranquilizers, adjusting. And sort of enjoyed it because he didn't say not to drink beer. He just said adjust. And I drink beer and adjust. And my dad wanted me to adjust and get a job. And every time he would indicate I needed to go to work, I'd have a stress attack and holler for Mama. You remember what that doctor told him, Mama, I need to rest. But I could go play sports and water ski, you couldn't handle the stress from working. Well, I come off of them at the end of the year, and I was adjusted. Went to a different school. No, you have to change schools, because that crowd at that other one will get you in trouble. I'd been at the new school 3 days, and that same damn crowd showed up wearing different faces. Some other people say, y'all know that crowd, don't you? They'll get you. The names are changed to protect the innocent, but they'll get you. Finally, that's what y'all told me when I got to AA. No matter where you go, there you are. And I said, my God, I don't need to hear that. I need to help something stop me from drinking. But that was my problem. And I'm not going to go into a bunch of drunkalogs here. I could tell them for weeks and months. I got strung out on a lot of other drugs and ended up going to 5 different colleges. And also back then they had a little thing going on called Vietnam. And being a peace-level man, I wasn't going. So the Army drafted me 4 times and I joined twice. And we ain't never left the state of Alabama. The Alabama Corrections Department got involved. It locked me up around 40 times. And at age 20, I was considered a habitual criminal in Alabama. I love the guy that talked about having his felony desire removed. Sometimes I still want to get junky and do stuff. Just don't do it. But my mom didn't know what to do with me. My dad didn't know what to do with me. Nobody knew what to do with me, and I didn't either. And I changed schools, and I was going to jail, and I was getting locked up, and I was getting strung out on drugs, and I was 20 years old, and I was scared and lonely and didn't know where to go. And also, too, I got involved in a lot of trouble this time. When I first got to AA, you guys talked about resentments. I said, I don't have any. Then I started remembering them. And one of the first resentments I can remember is when we were robbing a hardware store. Because my buddies had been in there before, and they knew where the good stuff was to steal, and they didn't tell me. So I got the damn flashlight and found the good stuff. Of course, my flashlight attracted 6 blue lights. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, you also told me, you think different. I said, about what? They said, what do you think about? And I can trace that back to that hardware store. I think differently. Because we were surrounded by cops, and my buddy says, man, let's give up. They're going to shoot us. They'd already shot one door down, and they were still firing away. And I said, give up. We're in a hardware store. We got shotguns. They'll never take us alive. My buddies and them, before I could get to the shotguns, they knew where the rope was. They tied me up, and we surrendered. They thought differently. Of course, one of them I know is an alcoholic, a good friend of mine that never did find this program, and got a friend from his brother about a year ago, and he died from alcoholism, age 37 years old. And I look back, and he and I were always real close, and I know what our identity was now, and have known for the last 9.5 years. But even then, and there were several other instances and cases like that, and I was getting real scared. I got off the drugs. The Department of Corrections will help you with that. And I was tired of going to different schools, and I needed something. And what a man needs to get sober is a woman. Now, up until that point, I had never done real well with women. I guess I dated healthy ones and they left. I don't know. But I never did do too well with women. I always did better with drugs and alcohol. Maybe I was the only one that way, but I was that way. And I met my wife about this time, and she knows now, and I know that she had been married in her first marriage to an alcoholic, and she'd been divorced about 6 months. And once you have an alcoholic in your life, by God, you got to keep one. That's the way Al-Anons are. We're exciting. When you've been involved in that kind of crisis, you get bored easily. So I met her one night hunting somebody to save me. She didn't know it. She was hunting somebody to save. And she looked at me and said, if I can save this one, buddy, that'll get my credibility back. I think that's in her head, not taking her inventory, and I know she doesn't mind me sharing that tonight, or I wouldn't be doing it, or I'd know where I'd sleep tonight later. I've learned a few things from y'all. But we started dating and took to each other real quickly. Sickness attracts sickness. Always does. And we decided to get married in February, Valentine's Day, 1970. You know how alcoholics are real romantic. You know, we had to have that special day. So we set our wedding date to get married February the 14th, 1970. Now, August of 1969, I went 3 weekends in a row, got drunk, and stood her up. And didn't find her, so she didn't want to take a chance of losing me, so we moved it up to September. And we got married in September of 1969. Because something on the market good as me, you didn't want to lose. And she figured if I stood her up a couple more times, her ego would have to let me go, so we got married. And we moved to Chattanooga, and I started back to school. Another thing, that this is about the 6th school. I think I was a junior in school before I was majoring in engineering because I think somebody wanted me to be an engineer, and I found out they wasn't going to let me drive a train, so I quit. I don't know why I was majoring in engineering. Somebody said they made money, and I said, hell, that's good, let's go. My dad always accused me of being a doctor because I'd been to school ever since he had known me, he said. I married my wife. We moved to Chattanooga. I started back to school and did pretty well for a while because I was working 10 hours a day, and I was going to school 4 nights a week, 4 hours, and I didn't drink, except on weekends. That don't count because everybody drinks on weekends. We owe it ourselves. We owe ourselves 18 beers, throwing up, and feeling good. We worked hard all week, and we earned that damn headache. And nobody's going to deprive us from that privilege. We do that every weekend, but next Friday we're feeling good, and we've earned another one. And that's the way we keep trying the same thing, expecting different results, and it don't work. Finally, she says, let's talk about our problem. Of course, we never talked about alcoholism. We talked about this and that. And she said, what do you think the problem is? Boy, my old psychiatrist clicked back in. I'm having trouble adjusting. living in this big town, I can't handle it. I'm a small town boy. I used to pigs and cows. We need to move. So here we go again. This time we're not changing schools. We keep the same jobs, and we moved about 25 miles away from Chattanooga, Jasper, Tennessee. And people used to ask, how far is it to Jasper, Tennessee? And I said, about 4 beers. I heard somebody say it last night. I had no earthly how far it was in mileage, but it took about 4 beers. So things went along for a while, cut back, drink on weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can't drink during the week because if you do, you're an alcoholic. And never before 5 o'clock, except on weekends since 12 noon. You have to move it up on weekends. And I didn't do those things, and I didn't even think about alcoholism, just didn't do those things for a while. And then started drinking again. Started drinking during the week. Maybe one nightcap. I said, I'm going to have one drink before bed. And I had a quart fruit jar. I'd fix me up a Jack Daniels and water in. That was my one drink. I always get a big glass if you're just going to have one drink. And pour about a pint in it, a little water, have one drink, go to bed. Finally, we decided to talk about what the problem was. Here we go again. We talked about everything. Can't use the small town. I'm living in one now. We've been married 3 or 4 years. Things going pretty well. So we decided what we needed to get our lives in order was some more responsibility. How does a married couple get more responsibility? Yep. We got another snotty-nosed kid coming into the world by drunk. It's going to change their marriage. God bless them. And, that's happening all over today still, This would be the thing. We decided if we had a baby, then it might change our lives. I said, great idea. Enjoy doing it. Let's get at it. Well, like I said, for the first time in my life, I got away from any guilt feelings. I hadn't felt any in years. And like I said, I'd had enough exposure to them Baptist churches, though. When she didn't get pregnant a little bit, I started to feel a little guilty. And what I associated that guilt with is God was punishing me. And because I love kids so much, I was not going to get to have a kid because of all the things I'd done to my parents. And that's the only thing I felt guilty about, and I knew that's what God was doing. And I became very angry and very resentful, but also, too, I felt guilty about how my mom and dad had tried to help me, and no matter how hard they tried to help me, it hadn't worked. Finally, after another couple of years, we've been married 5 or 6 years, my wife got pregnant. And this is the time, too, that right before her pregnancy, that my dad started back drinking. And I watched him go to pain pills, to drugs. I watched him go in DTs. I watched him go through his hallucinations. And I said I'd never get that bad. But I did. And I watched him die, and in 1975 he died. And by the grace of God, I had a toothache that weekend, and I was sober. I heard Colleen say the same thing last night when her dad got sick. I don't know why, but I was sober that weekend. I know why now. Is God meant for me to be sober when my dad died. And I stayed sober, and I didn't drink another beer, or didn't drink anything until January 1st of 1976, or that New Year's Eve. And went to a New Year's Eve party, and of course I went to the Baptist and got dipped in the meantime. They sung one more stanza for that one right back there in the back, and that's him. And I'm glad we have the white chip. That's the closest thing we have to the altar call. Baptists do it upright. But anyway, I got back into that, and I had those 2 drinks that night. And no, I did not, my tongue didn't beat my brains out trying to get another one. But as soon as I had those 2 drinks, my thinking changed again. Because I got up the next day, New Year's Day, and I was going to watch the bowl games, and I was going to go get a 6-pack of beer. I left the house going to go get a 6-pack of beer. I was going to drink 2 at the Sugar Bowl, 2 at the Rose Bowl, 2 at the Orange Bowl, and go to sleep. Walked into the store and says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Sure, give me a case of beer." And all I was going to buy was a 6-pack. It just come out, and I started drinking, on that day, and I didn't sober up again, and I never missed another day drunk or passing out until I did get sober July 9th, 1978. That was 2.5 years of pure hell. My little girl was born on March 15th of 1976, and she was healthy, and I made up my mind I'd go home that morning and drink the last of my Jack Daniels and lay down and go to bed, and I'd never drink again, because that a commitment I'd made to myself. I hadn't made it to anybody else but to myself. But I did that, and I didn't do what you people have taught me to do now, is ask for God's help. I was going to do it on willpower. And I'd had a lot of willpower, I thought, because I'd overcome a lot of adversities in my life. And it didn't work. And then I started really feeling guilty, because I couldn't quit drinking. So I went to the doctor. I had a bad case of the nerves because I was trying to cut back. You know, it's worse on your nerves to stay drunk than it is to try to cut back. Because I'd try to get off of it, then I'd go into shaking, and I was scared to death going into DTs, and I was scared to hallucinate. So I went to the doctor and told him I was having a problem with my nerves, and he said, well, what's your problem? Well, I told him about my sorry boss, how my wife wasn't worth a nickel, how she wouldn't go back to work. I told him all the problems and all the stress I was under. And he says, well, do you drink? I says, occasionally. And I think I believed that. He says, well, if you don't drink and everything, I'm going to prescribe this little yellow tablet for you. Take one of them 4 times a day. And that's how I got strung out on my Valiums. And in about 4 months' time, I had 4 doctors writing Valium scripts. And in about 6 months, I guess I was taking anywhere from 75 to 150 milligram a day, every day, passing out. My wife said we used to have 2 late movies at our house. Hers was Johnny Carson, mine was Walter Cronkite. For y'all that don't know, Walter Cronkite's the 7 o'clock news. That's as late as I usually made it. Then I'd wake up during the night. I'd go take me about a half a pint, drink it, and go to sleep. And I'd wake up and get my 3 blue Valiums in the morning, take them, and take a shower, and go to work, and go out at lunch, try to smoke a joint, drink a little beer, and take my Valium to get through the day. And this went on for 2 years. And from what I've learned about alcoholism and Valiums and everything, I know I'm here by God's grace. Because I've watched people die with less. And I don't know why God spared me. It doesn't matter. But when He did spare me this time, He sent me to you guys, and I never will forget that. Finally, things kept going bad. My wife went back to this preacher that had dipped me. She was going to tell him it didn't work. And he told her, he said, I don't know, but it sounds like Frank's an alcoholic. And she said, no, he's not an alcoholic. He just drinks beer. Thank God we can't be an alcoholic if we just drink beer. But anyway, he says, but my brother's an alcoholic, and his wife started going to Al-Anon. He said she started going to Al-Anon, and they've been going to Al-Anon and AA for about 14 years, and he hadn't had another drink. And he said, of course, I'm still concerned about my brother's soul. Well, at that time, my wife was not interested in my soul. She was concerned about my ass going to work. She didn't care a lot about my soul. She had it covered by life insurance. And so she come back, and that, just like the seed of AA was planted in me, Al-Anon was planted in her. And through that experience, sometimes we don't always get to harvest the crops, but by God, that's what the 12th step about is. The 12th step is about today, is planting seeds. Because you don't ever know when you may be the only big book anybody ever sees. And that was how somebody planted her seed for Al-Anon. And I think about a month or 2 later, she saw something on TV about Al-Anon. And she was going to call them, but she didn't. Then finally I pulled another drunk or something, that real obnoxious or something. And also, too, I was getting real scared at this time because I was starting to see things. You know, at first it scared me. People would walk out of the wall, black things, they'd get in front of my TV. Then it really scared me when they quit scaring me. Because, man, I used to say, this stuff don't scare me anymore. What's reality and what's not? They got in front of the TV. Hell, I'd just go change seats and watch and look around them. And there was some weird things going on. She started going to Al-Anon. And it's real funny. She started going to Al-Anon, and the postman started delivering AA stuff to my house. No matter what room you'd go in, there'd be something laying around. Have you ever tried to throw up and read a pamphlet on 20 questions? And I got that damn pamphlet, and I was going down there, and I got to number 17. I said, I better check this out. The first 16 answers are yes. So I lied on 17, 18. Went down and got honest on 19, 20. I looked at the damn thing. It said, if you answer 3 of these yes, you're an alcoholic. I trashed that piece of paper. Because I knew that she had that rigged just for me. She'd got somebody to print that up just for me. You know, she knew how I would answer. But anyway, she kept going. And she'd come home and she'd smile. And I was sitting there one night and I was hurting. And I got to the point, if any of you ever got there, I couldn't get high anymore. The high had been gone for a year. I couldn't get drunk and I couldn't get sober. And if you hadn't been there, you hadn't missed anything, because that's worse than hell. And we'd had a lot of fights, and she'd called me a lot of names in the past, and I'd called her a lot of names. And I remember I was just so angry at myself and hurting so bad that I tried to make her mad. And she said, I'm not going to allow you to do that. I love you, and you're an alcoholic, but I love you. Didn't know what to do. Like Edward said, when somebody told me that they loved me, I always grabbed my damn billfold. I didn't trust anybody, and I didn't trust my wife, and I didn't understand love. I always thought love meant that I had to give something back. And when she told me that, she said it in a voice that I heard. I didn't understand it, but I heard it and I believed it, and I could not get mad about it. But she kept going to Al-Anon. She came home one night from Al-Anon and said, I learned a couple of things about myself tonight. And I said, what do you mean? She said, you're not the only one that's got the problem. She said, some of those ladies at the meeting shared that there were a couple of things wrong with me. I said, well, those ladies are nice to you. If you want to know the damn story, get out your pad and paper, and I'll tell you what all's wrong with you. She went in the bedroom. I knew she went to get the pad and paper. 4 hours later, I went there and she went to sleep. You know, I couldn't believe she did that. You know, they told her just to let me sleep in the yard. She did. And this is in the summer, and it's hot. There's all kinds of bugs out there. You know, and you try to get up when you're withdrawing from Valiums and you drink some bad whiskey and you throwing it out and it comes out your nose and you snip it back and you get gnats. I'm still having fun though. Because I ain't quit drinking. And finally she just keeps going, and on July the 8th, 1978, the day before my sobriety day, July 9th, is also her birthday. So I was going out and get her a birthday present because I knew I was going to get drunk and screw something up. I'd already missed Mother's Day in May. So I was going to go get this at 10 o'clock in the morning before I got drunk. I don't know why, because I ain't never been sober. But I went by the golf course first. I used to belong to a country club, and I found out the last 9 months I never did play golf. I just rode around the cart and passed out. They used to raise hell when they was drawing their things for their dog fights, and whoever was on their team would say, "Oh, hell," because I never did, play. And I also gambled a lot. Had an extreme gambling addiction I had to give up, too. And I got in and hooked up with the bookies and the gamblers and drugs and dope and everything else. Anything that's fun, I get addicted to. And of course, I take it too far. And that day I went over and I drank about 12 or 13 beers, drank a pint of whiskey, and I took my last 8 blue Valiums that day. I was in a poker game and I was nervous. And the reason I was nervous, there was about a $1,000 pot, and I had a flush looking at me in the eye, and I was trying to bluff him with a higher flush, and all I had was red and black ones mixed. There's no way I could have had a flush, and I knew that, and I knew that he knew it, but by God, I was going to run it through. Didn't work. Lost my money, took my Valiums, didn't get a birthday present, of course. Got home the next morning, and I woke up, and I went in there, and I laid down on the TV. This is the best I can remember. And my TV was on, I think. Didn't matter much anymore. I watched what I wanted to, whether it was on or not. TV wasn't on. You could always go to the refrigerator and open it and hear music. Still having fun. So I laid down on the couch that morning, and to me, this is a show that I saw. There was a 17-year-old young man who had just got out of a treatment center, and I didn't know a damn thing about treatment centers then. And his girlfriend was trying to get him not to go to the beach and drink with his buddies because she said, you're an alcoholic. And whether this was on or not doesn't matter today. That's what I saw, and I saw myself at 17. And I saw myself not being able to do that, and not wanting to do that, but not being able to say no. And the person I saw on the screen was myself with some people pleading, "Don't go, you can't do it." And the little boy going anyway, and I don't remember what happened. I laid on the couch, and I snorted and hollered and grunted, tried to get my wife to get some aspirin. That didn't work. Finally, I got off the couch, rolled across the room, rolled right under her feet, where she'd have to notice me. She got up, stepped over me, and went in the other room whistling. I crawled in there to the other room, and I had the biggest puppy dog tears, and these are real. We alcoholics can conjure them up any time we want to when we're in trouble. But these are real. And I remember looking up at her with my tears flowing and my hurt and my pain and said, "Gail, I'm an alcoholic and I need help." And I cried out to myself, I cried out to her, and I cried out to God. Because I'd never asked for God to help me. I told him what I needed and how to do it. And on that morning, I didn't ask on anybody's terms. I said, "God, I need help." That's just what I need to do. Gail said, "You need to call Alcoholics Anonymous." I said, "Gail, will you call them for me?" See, I'd always had heard Mama taking care of me. She said, "Hell no, call them yourself." She was gracious enough to underline the number in the phone book, though. She knew I couldn't find it. I was shaking so bad she did circle it in red. Because by God, she hadn't, I wouldn't have found it. And at that time, I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got the answering service because it was on Sunday morning. And they said, "We'll have to have somebody call you back." And I got to thinking, well, nobody's going to call me back. This is Sunday morning. They're all in the same shape I'm in. I knew what the alcoholics did on Saturday night. Now, who in the hell was going to be able to call me back? Also, too, she got scared that they wouldn't call me back, so she snuck in and called a lady in Al-Anon and said, "Have your husband call him. He's ready." She didn't completely let go. I got 2 phone calls within 30 minutes First guy says, "My name's Dub and I'm an alcoholic." I said, "Well, how are you, sir?" He says, "You think you need some help?" And I said, "I know some need some help." He says, "Well, are you drinking now?" And I said, "Hell no, if I was, you wouldn't be talking to me." But I know, if you ever been on a 12-step call, that's the question you always got to ask, because you got to find out if you get talking to somebody that's hurting or you talking to a bottle. Because, a drunk will call you and talk all night and never get help. He'll get your number and call you back just when he gets drunk. So he wanted to make sure I wasn't drunk then. And he asked me, could I get to a meeting, and I couldn't write. I was shaking. And my wife got on the phone. She wrote directions down to a meeting here in East Ridge. And at that time, my hair was about down to here, and I had a long beard. And it's not that I'm against beards or for beards. I just hadn't been able to shave in a long time. I was too embarrassed to go to the barber shop, so I just looked that way. And but that afternoon, I decided if I was going to go to an AA meeting, I was going to look presentable. So I shaved that afternoon, 4 o'clock. We went to the meeting at 7 o'clock that night. I had a towel around my neck. I was still bleeding. Because I didn't clip nothing. I just went shaving and cutting. And we had a towel that was soaking red when I got over there. And I went in the room, and there was probably about 75 people that night, but it looked about like this many to me. And I kept looking around, and I was the only alcoholic there. I knew this, and it was at a East Ridge town hall, so I thought something else was going on, because everybody else was laughing. And I was the only one sitting on my hands. I was the only one that had gone through 9 cups of coffee and ain't got a swallow yet. I'm the only one doing that now. And I'm looking to see where the alcoholics are. And people's laughing and smell good. And I had some people walk up and say, I'm an alcoholic, and give me their phone number after the meeting. Can I have your phone? Or, hell no, you ain't getting my phone number. I knew what they wanted. My money. I only owed about $40,000 at that time, and I had 11 cents. But this one guy who had been away from the program about that time, and also, too, I remember looking, and they had a big table up there where they kept the literature, and they had 2 doors back there that I could see to do the men and women's restrooms. But I couldn't see the signs on them. I thought that's where they had alcoholics. And it's going to make them come sit at that table. It's going to be a before and after deal. And I was going to have to go sit up at that table. And I said, whoa, boy, this is getting shaky. But thank God that night this young man talking, he was 30 years old, and when I came into AA, I was 30 years old. And thank God for that. I think that's what it took. Because if there'd been some guy up there talking about World War II, the big one, I wouldn't have been interested. But he talked about hitchhiking up and down the road with a damn suitcase full of Boone's Farm wine. I said, I can relate to that. Trying to make a deal. And I said, buddy, this guy. And also, too, that night when they did the chip system, I thought, what difference is this going to make? He said, the only requirement for membership. And I thought about that tonight when we skipped this third tradition. His only requirement for membership is desire to stop drinking. That's all I heard. And by God, at that time, I'd had a desire for 12 years. I'd had a desire a long time. I'd had no fun for a long time. I took that chip, I think because God moved me and my wife's right elbow saying, get you one, sucker. Don't matter, but I picked that white chip up. And went through some tough times. I did not go through any detox period with my drug and alcohol withdrawal. I was going to my meeting one night about 4 days sober with my sponsor. I looked over and he was smoking a cigarette with horns sticking out of him. I went to a couple of meetings where the walls melted. I saw some crap that I ain't never seen. And I ain't telling nobody about this because I know where they'll put me. About 11 days later, too, I had me a little spell with my Valium withdrawals. But I kept going, and this guy had been out of the program for about a year. He hadn't drank, but he'd just been away from the program. And God works in strange ways. He got him back involved in AA. Because, man, he took me to meetings. He'd call and tell me. And I picked up on this program real quick. I'd been sober 40 days. I never will forget. I'd probably been 50 meetings. And they was reading how it works. And I looked up at my sponsor and I said, that sounds like the same thing they read last night. And he laughs out loud like y'all did. Everybody turns around and looks at him because he's making a fool out of himself. But you know what I'm thinking? They know what I said. I knew they were all laughing at me. Got mad, wasn't never going back again. He made a fool out of himself, and I quit. You know, we have feelings too, but sometimes we wear them on our sleeves. We have to work through a lot of stuff like that, but he kept taking me to meetings. I remember about 8 months I was going to divorce my wife. She wasn't doing right. I was going to leave her. He says, how long did she put up with you drinking? I said, 9 years. Why? He said, you have 8 years and 3 months to go. Real obvious there, I needed another damn sponsor. This one was not playing. About 3 nights later, I saw that didn't work, so I called him up and I said, I think I'm about to commit suicide. He says, so? I said, hell, I'm serious. He says, well, if you ain't done it by 8 o'clock, meet me at Grace Church. I hang up my telephone, I get mad, and I'm smoking, and I'm furious, and I'm going to drive over to Grace Church, and I'm going to tell him off, and I'm going to tell all his buddies off what he's like. You know what? He don't show. I was there, though. They'll trick you in this program. Don't believe them. This rigorous honesty is sort of scary sometimes. But they tricked me for my good. And he'd take me to meetings and he'd tell me, tonight I want you to listen to him. He'd point out who me to listen to. I said, hell, this ain't working. And I said, well, I'm going to listen to some different people tonight. He says, why? I said, well, I want a broader perspective of what's going on. I said, you just pick out your buddies every week. And I said, I still want to tell you a couple things about your damn buddies. I said, they don't pay attention in the meetings anyway. He says, why? I said, you listen. I said, you listen tonight. And I said, I don't care what the subject is. I said, you can talk about resentments. You can talk about fear. You can talk about anything you want to. And I said, you listen to what them old goats talk about. He said, what do they talk about? I said, no matter what the subject is. I said, all they ever talk about is 12 steps in God. I said, hell, I thought we were here to talk about problems. He said, it's time to go to solutions. And if you want some solutions, he said, if you want to talk about problems, go look in the mirror. If you want to talk about solutions, go get your damn big book. And that's what I did, and he kept carrying me to meetings and taking me to meetings. And I just love to have to share this one more instance. That he would never let me talk. That's enough. I said, my name's Frank. My name's Frank, and I'm an alcoholic. He said, thanks. But y'all would let me cry, and I cried a lot. And I think it's a lot from my Valium withdrawals. It didn't matter, though. I cried a lot, and y'all let me cry. And I hadn't cried in about 14 years because I got too tough to cry. You let me grow, and you forced me to grow. And I heard Lee last night when he said they told me don't make any major changes in the first year. I decided I wasn't going to make any in the first 2 years. So I still didn't pay my bills on time. Don't make any major changes, you know. Don't want to rush into things again. But I don't think I've made any changes since I've been in the program. God's made them through the 12 steps. He's made them through you people. And I've never made any change that hasn't been motivated by pain. But I knew that every change that I made, on the other side of the pain was a lot more serenity and blessings. And the next best thing that happened to me is a little over 2.5 years ago, my wife and I had another little baby. This one's a boy. And wouldn't have had that without you folks. Because she'd have been gone. I wouldn't have had her. My daughter's now 12, going on 20. I say Memphis has a big crowd. If any of you want to take her back to Memphis, I'll load her up and y'all can have her. But I had a little boy, and say we're running out of men alcoholics in my family. You know, and there's not any more men alcoholics except me and my brother, and we can't keep him sober long enough to get him married. So I had little boys, so we needed one to carry on the traditions. So at 4 months old, he had surgery because he was born with club feet. And tried to talk to the anesthesiologist that morning about being concerned about addiction and medications and everything. And he laughed at me. He said, yeah, but is you allergic to anything? I said, I'm a drug addict, an alcoholic. My whole family is, and you're not hearing me. He said, well, I know that, but is you allergic to any medications? So they take him into surgery, and they keep him in surgery for 5 hours, and they bring him back after 30 minutes in recovery, and he goes comatose because they OD'd him. God came again and saved my little boy. And because I said it took 5 times as much morphine to keep him under as it would a normal kid. But that was April 14th, 2 years ago, and last April 14th. And if he makes it to this April 14th, by God, he's got 2 years sobriety. And that's why so many young people here is important to me tonight. Because, down the road, I'm his daddy. I can't help him. Y'all got to help him. He'll come to y'all, just like y'all go to other young people. Because I know he's an addict. I know he's an alcoholic. He has no choice. I hope he never uses, but that ain't likely. And by God, me and my family need y'all to help my son, because I know it's coming. But by the look of this conference, since I've gained my sobriety, which is, like I said, it's going on 9 or 10 years, there wasn't nothing like this. And I know by the time he gets there, he'll be blessed with even more of you. And I don't have to worry about that. So that's another thing I can turn over to God in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm thankful for that. Thankful that my wife stuck by me. The only problem I got with my little boy, he doesn't go to enough meetings. His attitude sucks. And my little daughter told me not long ago, she said, Dad, I'm going to have to be a lawyer when I grow up. And I says, why is that? She says, where I can defend Ben. I said, why? She said, he'll be a hitman for the mafia. He's got some personality traits that I wish that I knew where they came from, you know. But I know that I can't stop that either. But I know that by the way young people's grown in Chattanooga and Memphis and the way it's grown here tonight is I don't have to do anything about it, but turn it over. And I've learned to live with a lot of my problems that way. Because when I came in here, I was unlovable, unteachable, and through God's grace and you people, you gave me back my life, you let me keep my wife, you gave me my family, and more than anything else, you gave me some love that I didn't know how to accept. And I don't know if it's helped anybody else, but it's really helped me. And if no one's told you they loved you today, let me be the first. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that was a beautiful talk, and I knew it would be. Donna has some announcements to make on the closing of the register. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back.